Today we're going to talk about the periodic table and about different kinds of information that you can know just by knowing an element's position on the periodic table. We know that the periodic table is an arrangement of the known elements in rows and columns that show them in groups of elements that have similar properties. The representative elements are the A elements, which I'll show you just in a moment what I mean by that on the periodic table. We're going to label the metals, the nonmetals, and the metalloids first to show where they are. Metals, as it says here, are ductile. They can be drawn into thin wires. They're malleable. You can hammer them into thin sheets. They have a luster, which means they're shiny, and they are good conductors of heat and electricity. So those are the characteristics. Nonmetals, you can pretty much just list all of those characteristics, but put a not in front of them. They're not ductile, not malleable, they don't have a luster, and they are poor or non-conductors of heat and electricity. Metalloids are our in-between substances that have characteristics of both. So let's look at our periodic table, and let's label these really quickly. One thing you always want to make sure you know where it is if it's not labeled in your periodic table is the staircase. The staircase separates the metals from the nonmetals. So here we have in this area the nonmetals. So make sure you're labeling your periodic chart like this. And this entire section, including the bottom two rows, are the metals. So these are metals, these are also metals. Now around the staircase are where our metalloids are located. Metalloids include boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium, polonium. When you start talking about polonium and acetine, these are radioactive, so some people still put them in the group along with the metalloids, but these, again, depending on your source, we're going to call these all metalloids. Now notice some notable exceptions. First of all, there are two elements that don't follow these rules. Aluminum is one of them, and you might want to put a note in aluminum's block that aluminum is clearly a metal. The other exception, as far as its location is concerned, is hydrogen. Hydrogen is clearly a non-metal. So those are two exceptions to this non-metal, metal, metalloid location rule. So now that we've labeled the metals, the nonmetals, and the metalloids, let's look at what we mean by a period or a group. We're going to go now spend the rest of our time on the periodic table. We're going to show where the periods are numbered, and I'm going to label the groups. You can look at this page for spelling because I'm going to be writing sideways a lot of the time, so you may have trouble seeing how I'm spelling it, but you can refer back to this page if you need to. So write this in on your periodic table. This first group, this is the alkali metals. Alkali metals. Group 2A, these are the alkaline earth metals. Please don't shorten that name, alkaline earth metals. Don't shorten the names. It's not alkali, it's not alkaline earth, it's alkali metals, alkaline earth metals. This section in the center, right here, these are called the transition metals. Some texts will carry it on to the staircase here as far as calling these transition metals. They are metals up to the staircase, we know, but many sources call simply these the transition metals. Notice the transition elements are the B elements, and this is what was meant by that A element thing for the representative elements. These numbers up here, the 1A, 2A, etc., these are the representative elements, the A elements are. And the B elements then, sometimes I call them the valley elements because they're kind of sunk down in the middle. Those are, again, the B elements. So we've got transition metals there for the B elements. Down here at the bottom, Both of these groups, okay, both of these bottom two rows are called the inner transition metals and the rare earth elements. Inner transition elements or inner transition metals and rare earth elements or rare earth metals. It's really kind of academic at that point, which one you call them. They're metals and they're elements. So rare earth elements. So both of the groups are called by those names. The top row, though, is called the lanthanide series, and the bottom row is called the actinide series. So those two names are for different rows. Intertransition metals and rare earth elements refer to both rows, but lanthanide series and actinide series refer to their own respective rows. Lanthanide series on top, actinide series on bottom. As far as the rest of our groups then, we've got the boron family here. Please don't just write boron, it's the boron family. The carbon family. The nitrogen family. Some people call the next group the oxygen family, but that one's easy, so I'm going to give you the one that's a little bit harder to remember, the chalcogens. If you know this one, you can come up with oxygen family. Then we have the halogens. And finally, we have the noble gases. Down the side of the periodic table is the period. So these are the periods down here, numbered, what row it's on rather than columns. So we've got the first row, second row, third row, etc. This is periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you notice, these bottom two rows fit up into periods 6 and 7. So these are also known as 6 and 7. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7 for the periods.